Thanks, guys. Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Well, I've decided this morning that I'm going to start by making you do something. Is that okay? No sleeping when I preach. So I have a statement for you, which I'm going to get Jacob to put up there. And I want you to talk to the person next to you or behind you or around you about whether you agree with this statement or not. Good things happen to good people. Or good things happen to good Christians. So have a chat. I'll give you a few minutes. And then we might vote. This is dangerous, giving you a few minutes to yourself. All right, time to put you out of your misery. Not that I have all the answers. So we're going to vote. Okay, so who agrees with this statement that good things happen to good people? So presumably all the rest, who disagrees with this statement? No adding to it. You can't add to it, you can't take away from it. Who is undecided? Okay. So we really don't have a very clear decision here, do we? No. It's how you read it, how you interpret it. Well, I think we would like it to be this way. I think if I said who would like it to be this way, I'm sure I'd have everybody's hands up. Because you're not included, okay? You've got to wait till the end. We can have a personal discussion. Sorry?
That's only if we're good people.
Ah. So you're saying good things don't happen because we're not good enough?
Oh, don't. This close like it on.
Well, you can continue the discussion about that statement later, but we would like it to be this way, most of us. We would like our lives to be perfect. Always being in perfect health, always knowing what to say, always having enough finances to do the things that we want to do, always having enough energy and enthusiasm and being able to complete everything that we want to, almost like a fairy tale that we would like to come true. But in reality, maybe not so. You know, we live in a world that celebrates success, that celebrates people that have it all together. And so in some ways there's this sort of pressure, this expectation that that's the way that our lives are going to be. But in reality, our lives are not always good. Our world is cursed because of sin. And when sin came into the world, unfortunately, it brought things in that are not necessarily good. And sometimes God doesn't protect us. He doesn't give us immunity against sickness or suffering or pain or hardships. So sometimes bad things happen, and often we find ourselves in a place of weakness. You know, Mark's been speaking for the last 2 weeks about leaving behind the past. But sometimes to be able to leave behind the past, you have to actually go back into the past. And you have to actually get prayer, and you have to actually get counselling, you have to actually work through that. That's a time of weakness, a time where we don't want to go because we don't want to go back there. But by doing that, we can move forward. But weaknesses come in all sorts of forms, and they can be caused by lots of things. It might be your past. It might be injury. It might be loss. It might be mistreatment by others. But suffering, challenges, and hardships are universal. And at some time or other in our life, we will always face these. So my question is, how do we live in these hard times? How do we live in times of weakness, in suffering? I think so often we try to escape. We go to God and we say, God, please take away this, whatever it is that we don't like that's going on in our life. Or we go to other people and try to get them to help us, or we look within ourselves to try to find, how can I get out of this valley, out of this hard time? And sometimes it's successful. Sometimes we do manage to go through. But what do we do when we don't? When we're still there, we're still in the valley, we're still in this place of weakness. I look at verses like Joshua 1:9 where God says, be strong and courageous. And you think, wow, yes, that's what we need to be. And we look at the heroes in the Bible and we think, wow, David was a king and, all these amazing people that were incredible and they were so strong. But then I also look at their lives. They also were weak. I read through the Psalms and we see David. It says so often that he was downcast. And he talks about going through the valley of the shadow of death. That's not a time of strength. Or what about someone like Joseph? What does his brothers do? They sell him as a slave. Then he goes to Egypt. Then he gets accused falsely and then he goes into prison. 13 years of his life, he's either a slave or he's in prison. They're long times of weakness, long times of hardship. Or Job. He loses his family, he loses his wealth, he loses his health. And then look at Jesus. There he is alone on the cross. His disciples have deserted him. Vulnerable, suffering, exposed in front of people. So if these heroes of the faith have times of weakness, who are we to think we're going to be any different? But what do we do when we're weak? What do we do when we find ourselves in these places? Today I'm going to encourage us all that we should embrace weakness. Now that doesn't make any logic sense, does it? I'm a fairly logical person. I can't see why I'd want to embrace times of hardships and times that are challenging. But this is what Paul encourages us to do. In 2 Corinthians 12, he says, I will not boast about myself except about my weakness. How can he say that his weakness is something to boast about? I think to understand this, we have to read a little bit more about this passage. And a couple of verses after he makes that statement, he says, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded to the Lord to take it away. So what is this thorn? The thorn is not sin, but we don't actually necessarily know what this thorn is. In fact, when I was reading it, I was thinking, the thorn, it's probably a little prickle. I pruned some of our raspberries the other day and got a little prickle. It was a bit a bit of discomfort, but it didn't really stop me doing anything. And so I kind of read that and think, yes, poor Paul. He had a little tiny prickle in his finger. But when you actually look at the word for thorn, it doesn't mean a little tiny prickle. It actually means a stake, like a tent stake. So when I think of having a tent peg stabbed in me, that's something a little bit more significant. It's a bit bigger than, it's a big raspberry bush if it's got a prickle the size of a tent stake. So this is something pretty significant in Paul's life that is causing him pain. We don't know what it is. If you think about a thorn, sometimes a thorn kind of weaves itself inside of your flesh, so it could be something internal. Some commentators say it might be sickness, or it might have been a disease or some sort of condition that he had. Or maybe it's external. When you think of a thorn pushing in, it could have been persecution from people around him, people that didn't like the message that Paul was sharing. But at the end of the day, the point of it is not what the thorn is. The point of it is what the thorn was doing. The fact that this thorn was causing him pain, that this thorn was putting him in a place of weakness, and that he was suffering because of it. We all have thorns at some stages in our lives. And we might do what Paul does and pray to God and say, God, take this thorn away from me. In fact, Paul didn't just pray. It says he pleaded with God 3 times. He was pretty intent on, God, I want this thing gone. I do not want this thing in my life. And God answered. I mean, God was faithful as he always is, but his answer wasn't yes. His answer was no. Paul knew that God had the power over darkness, that God could do whatever he wanted to do, that he could take this thorn away and deliver him from the pain, and yet God's answer was no. Instead, he said, "My grace is sufficient for you." So I've said that I want to talk about embracing weakness, and I've only got 2 points today, so that makes it easy to remember. But why should we embrace weakness? The first one is because it's where we grow. Rather than our weakness being a cause of shame, it can be a catalyst for our spiritual growth. It can cause us to learn how to depend on God, how to find a deeper understanding for his grace. His grace will comfort and sustain Paul. It will enable him to stand firm, even with the pain and the embarrassment that this thorn brings. And for Paul, it was more important to have God's presence during the suffering that the thorn brought than to have the thorn removed. God's grace signifies 2 things. It's the goodwill of God towards us that is sufficient enough to strengthen us, to comfort us, and to help us. And also the good work of God within us to actually mature and grow us. As I read before, it says that this thorn was a messenger for Satan. It was something that the devil had intended for harm, but God was able to turn it around and to use it for good. Because God showed Paul that this thorn had a purpose. God used it to prevent Paul from exalting himself. It forced him to be humble and to accept his inabilities and to draw near to God. You think about Paul. He's got plenty of reasons for boasting. In fact, earlier in the chapter, just before these verses, God has given him an amazing revelation. He could go, "Well, I'm pretty impressive. God has chosen me to show me this great revelation." He didn't tell any of you, he just showed me. He had good reason he could have been proud. Or look at what he says in Philippians 3. "I'm of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, a Pharisee, zealous in persecuting the church. As for righteousness based on the law, I'm faultless." He could have had lots of reasons to think of himself as proud, as high and mighty. But the strength behind Paul's ministry wasn't himself. It wasn't his abilities, it wasn't his experiences, but God's grace alone. This verse goes on to say that God's power is made perfect in weakness. And this phrase, perfect, means to be mature, to be complete, to reach the intended goal. Paul's weakness made him grow. Romans 5 verse 3 to 4 says, "We also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope." We all love the seasons of victory, of breakthrough, when everything's going amazing and well. But weakness creates an opportunity for surrender to him. Billy Graham says, "Mountaintops are for views and inspiration, but fruit is grown in the valleys." So weakness can be a catalyst for growth, as it forces us to depend on God and not ourselves. It allows him to mature us. And just like in a storm, the wind and the pressure of the storm makes the trees grow deep. It forces the roots deeper. It's exactly the same with us. Weakness develops the depth in our relationship with God. So the first reason to embrace weakness is because it's where we grow. And the second reason is because it's where God gets to shine. 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9 to 10 says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Notice the focus is on my power and my grace. It's not on us. God tells Paul that his power is not just perfected in weakness in general, but it's in Paul's weakness. And by extension, in your and my weaknesses. God's power is made manifest in our human vulnerabilities and limitations. If we are strong, if we can do it all, what do people see? Us. But if we are weak, his power can be made perfect through us, and people can see him as we reveal his glory. And I was trying to think about, well, what exactly does this mean, his power is made perfect in weakness? And I think it means two things. I think it means that God's power strengthens me personally as I'm going through the hard times. There's so many verses in the Bible, I started to look at them, about the fact that God is our strength, that he is our source of power, our source of encouragement, our source of the thing that sustains us through the difficult times. So when we're in our valleys, when we're in our hard situations, he brings us the strength that we need. Just one of these verses is from Isaiah chapter 40. And it says, he gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. So God is the source of our power that enables us to get through the hard times. We don't strengthen ourselves, but it is him who gives us the strength to get through the valleys. And the second thing I think this means is that God's power is able to move through me. I read in the Bible of so many times where God delights in taking a situation where human strength is lacking to actually show his power and to demonstrate his greatness. I think about Gideon with the Midianite army. God told Gideon to take his army and make it 300 men. From thousands, shrink it down, shrink it down, shrink it down, make it 300. And with 300 men, with clay jars, with lamps, and with trumpets, they defeated the enemy. That is not a battle plan that man would have. That is not based on the strength of the Israelite army. That is based on God, making it very clear it was his power that got the victory. Or what about Joshua with Jericho? How did the walls fall down? A shout and some trumpets. Again, not human strength, no battering rams, no great huge army, just people walking around, shouting, blowing trumpets. God's power showing through human weakness, making it clear that the victory was from him. We also see that God uses individuals' weaknesses to better help his kingdom. I think about Moses. When God called Moses and told him what he wanted him to do, what did Moses say was his weakness? I've got faltering lips, I can't speak. And yet what did God ask him to do? Go and speak. He didn't ask him to do the things that Moses was strong in. He asked him to go and do what he couldn't do so that God's power could be made clear. We see examples in our lives as well today. I think of one, who I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I don't know how to do it, but Nick. This book. I don't know if any of you have read it. It was a guy that was born without limbs. He's actually an Australian guy. But despite this, he's become a successful motivational speaker and author. And he talks about the fact that his disability has been a blessing in disguise. It's given him a unique perspective on life and the ability to inspire others. And I was just looking, you can borrow this book if you like, but in the middle there's some pictures of him surfing, of him scuba diving. And you think, how can you do this? You've got no limbs. He can type on a computer with the little tiny foot that he has. Like, I'm just amazed. But basically, he can be a showcase for God's power. And we can be the same. Not necessarily in the way that the world demands, not by getting rid of our weaknesses necessarily, but by God giving us strength to endure and rejoice, even in our tribulation. And today I've asked Katie if she'll come and just share with us a little bit about a story of what's been going on in her life and how even in her times of weakness that God has actually been able to provide strength and move through her. Katie.
Hello. I got Andy up here to be props and to read anything that I can't read through. So I'll take my glasses. The church has grown so much in the last 9 months. And 9 months ago, I received a diagnosis, many of you would know, of stage 4 bowel cancer. And so I haven't met a lot of you. So I'm Katie. Andrew does have a wife, if you've wondered, but with my treatment, I really have good weeks and bad weeks, and they just rotate fortnightly like that, so I try to get here every fortnight. I just want to firstly start, you're going to hear about a few things that we've been doing, but just start with saying all glory to God, because it's not in my strength or our strength as a family that we've been able to do these things, it's through Him. And so from my initial diagnosis in November last year, I chose to respond to it with two things. One of them was I chose to try my best to keep a soft heart. You know, I work with women and children in crisis through my work at Gyra House all the time, and I see when crisis hits how easy it is for people to develop a hard heart. And so I deliberately chose God, and it's a daily discipline to say, God, help me to keep a soft heart through this. And the second thing I chose to do was to believe that there had to be a greater purpose. Many scriptures have been anchors and daily reminders in knowing how we as a family needed to respond. But this one in particular is my personal mission mandate. It's from the Message version. It's Matthew 5:14-16. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colours in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop on a light stand, shine. Keep open houses, be generous with your lives. And I love this bit. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. So when I walked into the Icon Centre, Cancer Centre in Hobart, I was expecting what I'd seen on TV, like in all the American medical dramas, that all the chemo patients would be sitting around a table playing cards and have their chemo attached, but it wasn't like that at all. We all have our little cubicles. They're lovely, but they're all got curtains around them. And knowing that there was a greater purpose in this, I really struggled, because I said, God, how are you going to use me if I couldn't speak or see other patients? And so over that next 6 months, I just sat there and I observed, and I realised that our role in this season was not to preach. Instead, we need to commit to shining Jesus through acts of kindness, shining a light that they'd never seen before that attracts them to Him and not to me. So what have we been doing? Well, we've been doing a lot of things, and I've only got a short space of time, so I think there'll be other days where we can share everything. But one of the things was, I think there's a picture, Jacob, on the next slide. One of the things we've been doing is blessing staff and everyone at the Icon Centre, and there's heaps of stories that have come out with that. And to briefly say what it's done is it's just shifted an atmosphere where they're opening up to us, they're chatting with us, they're asking questions about my life, my singing, my music. We wrote a letter of gratitude to them, and they read it out to the whole team and said most of them cried, which was not my intention. But it's just really shifted that atmosphere with the relationship between the nurses and us as well. But I like this comment, and I thought it aligned with what we were talking about, Andrea, but my oncologist, Dr. Lou, said to me, I can't believe that you would take the time to extend so much kindness to us in a time when you're going through so much. And I just think it's that perfect example that when we are weak, God makes us strong. And when we're weak, there are so many opportunities that we can still work for him. So the main two things that we've been doing, and can I just say before I say this, everything idea that comes into my head, I get into activation mode and I do it, and then I feel so stupid. And I walk in there with this bag of things, and the first time we took some bottle bag things in, Andy goes, "When are you going to give it to them?" And 5 hours later, I just gave it to Andy. I said, "You do it." Because I just felt, this is such a silly idea. Who wants this? No one's going to want this. This is so stupid. And then once I do it, it's just like, oh man. You see the reactions of the nurses and everything, and it's just, it's so special, and you realise it was God inspired. So to explain the next photo, is there one of me before that? Yeah. So when I have chemo, I'm there for anything from 5 to 6 hours, and then I go home with this bottle hanging around my neck. And that stays on for 48 hours. And so when they give you that bottle, they give you the mesh bag. And I went home, and knowing that I wanted to work with this bottle on for 2 days, Charlotte and I started sewing some bottle bags that are a lot more pretty and glamorous, a lot more me. And then very quickly we decided, let's actually start making these for others. And so we've been sewing. We've probably done about 25 so far. There's different sizes because whether I'm on a 100% dose or 80% dose determines the size of the bottle. But we package them up. You can keep going, Jacob. You package them up with a little card and a roll of fruit tingles. And Andrew's just going to read out the first card because, I don't want to cry. There you go.
Thank you, Katie. She asked me to do this 10 minutes ago, and I didn't know I was going to do this today, and I haven't told her that every time I read this I get emotional as well, so I'll do my best to get through. Just because I think of, what Katie's going through and the fact that she can want to bless others in this time, in her valley. She's bringing strength to others, and it's sort of what Elliot was talking about. When we're going through our hard times, we can't do it by ourselves. So these little cards just let people know that other people are going through it and thinking about them as well. So I'll give it a crack. Dear friend, please accept this bottle bag as a gift from someone who knows and understands the struggles of chemo. One way I am able to remain positive during my treatment is to continue working. My 13-year-old daughter and I have started sewing these bags so I could wear my bottle proudly to work and not feel so self-conscious. We hope and pray this bag provides you with the same confidence. And the fruit tingles are what helps me through the day in moments when I'm feeling unwell. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. Remember, you are stronger than you know. This bottle bag isn't perfect, but it's been made with love and you in mind. God bless, Katie and Charlotte. And then there's a little verse along the side as well.
So there's, my nurses feel like my little elves. So they're getting so much enjoyment and joy out of giving all these gifts to the patients. And they've told me many stories. But this one on the screen I made, and I thought, who's going to wear a Darth Vader bag? And they rushed into me to see me when I went to have my bottle bag, and they said, "We just want to tell you a story of a 70-year-old man who chose the Darth Vader bag." And he said, "In all my life I've always been good, but when I have my chemo bottle I feel a bit sinister and I really want to wear this Darth Vader bag." And in a fortnight's time, we went back and he'd given Charlotte and I a beautiful note, and which I haven't got to read out today, but in a box of chocolates, and so that was really special. I then was faced with a dilemma that we're sewing all these bottle bags, but they're only specifically for bowel cancer patients, and I wanted my reach to be even more. So here comes the pandas, which Mitch, sometimes reluctantly, spends lots of time at the 3D printer printing these cute little pandas. That's a large one that we've been giving to the nurses for their desk spaces. And these are little ones that we put in a bag with a squeegee ball as well. And this note says, I'll try this. Dear friend, when I was diagnosed with cancer and undergoing surgery, I found comfort in being able to hold things in my hands. My 15-year-old son Mitch created some fidget cats for me. I held them when I couldn't sleep, when I was worried, and also when I was missing my cats at home. My daughter Charlotte lent me her stress balls too. I don't know what you are facing today, but I understand how treatment can be overwhelming emotionally and physically. Mitch has printed a panda for you to hold. We pray this panda's cute face and movable paws will distract you from whatever today brings. Charlotte has also given a stress ball for you to squeeze through any discomfort, and the fruit tingles are what help me through the day in moments when I'm feeling unwell. Pandas are known to be resilient, staying calm under pressure and threat. You may not feel it today, but you are resilient too. You are stronger than you know. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. God bless Katie, Andrew, Mitch and Charlotte. So we delivered them last fortnight and the nurses were ecstatic, squealing around looking at them. And I just want to share one final story. But 2 weeks beforehand, I was sitting in the Icon Centre waiting to have my bottle taken off, and a young couple walked in, and this girl, I don't know, I feel like she'd be like Hannah and Will's age group. And he was there with his arm around her, holding her like I remember Andrew was holding me. And it was very evident to me that was their first appointment and they'd been dealt some pretty bad news. And so I just sat there and I prayed for them in my heart. 2 weeks later, we take these pandas in, and after an hour, I see her and her partner walk in, and they were having their first treatment, and she looked terrified. And it reminded me of my first treatment and how for 6 hours I just sat there and cried. And my nurse, Abby, came in to me, who's kind of like my little mission girl. She goes and does everything for me, and she came in and she said, Katie, there's a girl in here who it's her first time, and I gave her a panda. And she said, I told her all about you. I told her you understand everything she's going through today. And she took this panda, and she actually said, which I didn't pick up, she said, oh, you know, we'd really like to try and connect you guys at some point. And then when she left, Abby said to me, you've made a difference today. They are just overwhelmed and shocked. Every time we give them something, they well up with tears at how kindness is shining through in this time that we're going through. So we've been dealt a pretty big battle, but there is purpose in it, and God has opened the doors to a group of people we didn't even know 9 months ago. In a way, they've become like family. I miss them when I'm not there. And we have such a heart to keep shining Jesus' hope and light to them. So that's it. And I do have to give credit to Charlotte because she put that Matthew verse on my hoodie. So there's lots of subtle things that we're doing by not preaching. We're just going in there. I have Bible passages sitting on my chair and everything. So there's lots of subtle things, but it's just all about being God's light. So sorry.
Thanks, Katie. So I think, 2 mics now. I think you'd agree with me that that is an example of God's power being made perfect in weakness. You know, thinking back to Paul, we don't know why he had the thorn. We don't know why God didn't take it away, but God used him. We don't know what's going to happen. We're praying and believing for Katie's healing, but in the time that she's in the valley, God can still use her and use her family. So thanks, guys. You know, God works in the big wow moments where we see amazing healings and amazing miracles, but he also works through our weaknesses. We get to see the transformative power of the gospel, but in a different way, demonstrating that God can work through brokenness. If we can trust him with our weakest moments, he can trust us with his power. God's power being made perfect in weakness is clearly displayed in Jesus on the cross. Philippians 2 said that Jesus, in the very nature of God, became a servant. He humbled himself. He died. But because of this, God exalted him. God rose him from the dead. God defeated the devil, and he saved us. And Jesus' scars, and likewise our broken lives, are a beautiful picture of God's glorious redemption. So as Christians, our greatest purpose is for him to shine through us, but that might not necessarily be the way that the world demands. The weaker we are, the more his power can be displayed in us and through us, so we can embrace weakness. There's an old Indian fable that I heard, and it's about a water bearer who used to have 2 large pots on the end of a pole. One pot had a crack in it, and so every day as he would fill both pots up and he would take them to the master, he would get to the master's house with 1 full and 1 half full pot. This went on for 2 years. One pot was very proud of its accomplishments, while the imperfect pot was embarrassed at its failure. Its distress at being only able to accomplish half of what it was made for resulted in it speaking up to the water carrier one day. "I am so ashamed," the pot said. "Why?" asked the carrier. "Because of my crack, water leaks out all the way to your master's house, and I've been only able to deliver half of the load." The water carrier looked kindly at the cracked pot and said, "As we return to the master's house today, look at the beautiful flowers along the path." The pot was a little cheered by the beauty that he saw on the way. "Did you notice that the flowers were only on your side of the path?" the water carrier asked. "I've always known about your flaw, and I took advantage of it. I planted seeds on your side of the path, so that as we walked each day from the stream, you watered them. For 2 years I've been able to pick fresh, beautiful flowers for my master's table. Without your crack or your weakness, this beauty would not have graced his house." Why can't I find a job? Why am I trapped in this awful marriage? Why does my dad have cancer? Why can't I have children? Why do I have no friends? Why am I so unwell? Why is nothing working in my life? I don't know. In Hebrews it says that by faith some escaped the sword, but by faith some were killed by the sword. By faith some stopped the mouth of lions. By faith some were sawn asunder. By faith some were mighty in war, and by faith others suffered chains and imprisonment. Same faith, same God, different outcomes for reasons that are beyond our knowledge. So I don't know why good things don't always happen to good people. But I do know that all things work together for good. Not that the thing itself is necessarily good, but that it will work together for good for those that are called according to his purpose. Nothing happens except what God has allowed to happen. And if God has allowed it, he has a good purpose for it. Remember Jesus' prayer in the garden. "If it is possible, take it away. But not my will, but yours be done." So it doesn't mean that we stop praying. It doesn't mean that we don't seek to try to find a way out of our valleys and we don't take the options that are there for us. But if we find ourselves in a long period of weakness, can I encourage us all to embrace it? "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And because of this, Paul can say, "I will boast all the more about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." So today, I don't know where anyone here is at. I'm sure there's some here that are having good times, that they're on top of the world and everything's amazing, but there's probably others that are struggling, that are having a time of weakness in whatever area. And can I encourage us all to embrace our weaknesses, but also to not keep trying to hide them, to not keep trying to keep up appearances and make it look like I'm good. "How are you today?" "Oh, yes, I'm doing really well." We're so good at doing that. But to be real, to actually be transparent and say, "Hey, I am struggling. I am in a time of weakness." This leads to a more authentic life and encourages us as a body to be able to support each other and to accept each other's limitations. And most importantly, it encourages us to cease relying on ourselves, but to truly rely on him. You know, I think even of the songs that we've done today that Rach has picked, you know, when I'm in a battle, he's for us. He's the waymaker. I think about what Elliot shared at communion, about dying to ourselves, about the cross, about the fact that we do have to have times in our life where we have to give up some things that we want, and we don't necessarily like that, but why? It's for his glory. And so can I just encourage you today, if that is you, feel free to come down for prayer. You know, we are a family. We want to be able to gather around people that are struggling and support you, to believe and to stand with you that you're going to get through that valley, that you're going to get to that next mountaintop experience where God opens the door and opens your eyes to amazing and incredible things. But for whatever time we're in the valley, let's let his grace and his power shine through us. Let's pray. Dear God, I just thank you for your word, God, and I thank you for your power, the power in your word. And that, God, sometimes we read things and we think this doesn't make sense. Why should I embrace weakness? Why should I enjoy the hard times and see them as times that I can boast of, like Paul does? But God, I know one thing about your word, and that is that if we trust it, if we act on it, if we do what it says, that God, that it will come to pass, the promises that you fulfill from that. And so, God, I just think of those within our congregation that are struggling, that are going through hard times, those that we know about and those that we don't. I just pray that your peace and your strength will be with them, that your grace will comfort them and sustain them. And that, God, that you will just help them to walk through that valley. That, God, that you will be what they need, and that you'll help us as your family to be able to support and encourage and walk with them as they go through the hard times. Pray for that in your name. Amen.